What is up, New Life Church? Man, I'm excited to be here. As Jason said, I am fresh out of Kid Life Camp, which was an experience. And I don't really know how to properly describe that experience, except first of all, can I just say, I have a new appreciation for our people who serve in Kid Life. Can we give it up for them? Whether they're sitting in here, maybe clap loud enough they hear us. That is a challenge. It's an exciting challenge, but I always heard it was like herding kittens, right? So with the boys, it's more like herding kittens that punch each other. I think the best way to describe this whole experience would be okay, so imagine that we are all going out to lunch together. Every single one of us, church is over, we're all about to go to lunch. We got 10 minutes. People are already showing up there, and half of you can't find your shoes. That was it. But the cool thing about this, though, is even though sometimes I felt like I wanted to pull what little left of my hair out, it was awesome seeing God moving in the lives of all of these kids. In fact, we brought 10 boys. We brought 27 girls, but we brought 10 boys that were in my charge. And every single one of them, at least at one point, I saw they had some way that God was moving in their life. So that was exciting. Like I said, for those of you that are good at math, 10 plus 27 means we brought 37 kids from our campus all the way to Kid Life Camp, which was exciting. We had people make Jesus the boss of their life for the first time. Across the state, we had 298 campers, and 20 people for the first time made Jesus the boss of their life. So what an amazing experience, what an amazing way to do God's work, which actually kind of really leads us to what we're talking about today. We're actually wrapping up our series in Matthew today, talking about the Great Commission. And I love the Great Commission. We talk about it. I think if you've been a Christian for more than 5 minutes, you've probably heard about the Great Commission. But for those who just need a refresher, it's in Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20. And it says this. It says, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So why is the Great Commission? Why is it so important? Why do we talk about it so much? Why do we put so much emphasis on this? Well, first of all, those are some of the last things that Jesus said to his disciples. Not the last, but some of the last things that he said. This actually wraps up the book of Matthew. And I think about it from my standpoint, as a father, right? If I'm going out the door, I'm going to work or whatever it is, I see my kids, I'm okay, listen, remember, you've got to do the dishes. You got to do, I'm putting special emphasis because that's what I want them to remember to do. Those are usually it's the last reminder. Okay, you know this, we've been talking about this, but just remember. And second of all, the gospel, the good news, everything, this is not for just one person. It's not just for the disciples. It's not just for the apostles. It's not just for the people of that time. This is something that was meant for everyone if they chose to accept it. So the big question is, and I would say, keep in mind, it doesn't say to go and tell people about Jesus. It doesn't say go and just, hey, let people know what happened. No, it says to make disciples. So the big question is, why aren't we doing this? Seriously, why aren't we doing this? Well, it's hard. It's really hard to do this. It is, I'll admit. There's a cost to do this. There's a cost in our lives. We have to, sometimes that means we've got to give something up. Sometimes that means we got to do something that we don't want to do. But can I tell you, there's a cost not to. And we're seeing this today. Look, in the past 20 years, the number of Americans who said they belong to a church has dropped by 20%. 20%. And part of this is because I think we have a culture where people are focusing on the imperfections of a church filled with imperfect people. And this has become so evident in our society. We want to focus on the negative. And I'm not just talking about like our church. I'm not just talking about this church. I'm talking about all churches. We want to look at a church from another state and we want to be like, oh, they do this wrong. I don't like they do this. And what happens is we shift our focus to the negative. And what happens when that is all of our focus gets shifted to the negative. And because of this, for the first time in American history, the number of people who regularly attend church has dropped below 50%. The first time in history. And on average, more than 100 churches per week are closing their doors for good. Can I just tell you, the enemy is celebrating this. He is absolutely celebrating this. But it's even more goes, these two things go hand in hand, right? So we got church attendance is down. We got people leaving churches. We got churches closing. And then guess what? At the same time, the number of people getting married has dropped to the lowest rate in American history. Drug use among all demographics is at an all-time high. The suicide rate in the past 20 years has increased by more than 30%. Life expectancy in the U.S. has experienced a 3-year decline. That's the first time since World War I. And a lot of people will be like, oh, well, we just had the pandemic and COVID. No. It's not that at all. Experts say it's largely due to a surging rate of what they call deaths of despair. That's suicide, overdose, and alcoholism. Like suicide is now the second leading cause of everybody between the ages of 10 through 34. This is the cost of not making disciples. This is where we're at. But y'all, Jesus is the antidote for hopelessness. And believers, like that's us. We're not the antidote. We're just the delivery vehicle. Look, Jesus said this at the beginning of the Great Commission. He said, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. Look, Jesus has the authority, okay? Jesus has the authority. He's commissioned us to do what? To go and make disciples. That's it. That's our job. Like all those terrifying numbers that I just spelled out, all those hard things that we just talked about, it's not up to us to try and come up with a solution. It's not up to us to try and come up with a fix. That's not our job. That's Jesus's job. He has the authority, and guess what? He already has. And he's given us a job. He's given us a job, and it's to go and do. That's it. Turn to somebody and say, go and do. Turn to somebody sitting next to you. Go and do. Like that's it. Go and do what? Make disciples. Not tell people about Jesus, not lead them in a salvation prayer, to make disciples. So to do this, and you've heard this before, I know, because James talks about it all the time, but to make disciples, I must be a disciple of Jesus. I love that we have a pastor who talks so often about this. Like we cannot make disciples unless we first are a disciple. In fact, Jesus said it this way in Luke 14. He said, if you want to be my disciple, you must by comparison hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. He's saying you cannot be my disciple unless you're willing to go and do the things I tell you to. And we hear this frequently. I think even James used this a few weeks ago. Like we hear this all the time, but the problem is I don't think we often sit in actually what this means. He's saying, look, you might say you love me. You might consider yourself a disciple. He said, but unless you are willing to put me first in all things, okay? We're talking, unless you're willing to put me over your job, over your hobbies, over your family, over your kids, over your kids' hobbies, over your wife, over even your life, unless you're willing to put me over all of that, you're not my disciple. So the first question we have to ask is, what is a disciple? Like what does that look like? Well, the word disciple comes from the Greek word mathetes, okay? And it means learner or pupil, but we love to say the word student. And I'll be honest, I have a love-hate relationship with that word. I do. Like, I love the idea of a student, because if you're a student, you're always learning. Like, we talk about that, and that's true. As a disciple, you're always supposed to be learning. Like, we serve a God who is so much bigger than we can possibly understand. And if you think you have God all figured out, you probably have more to learn than most other people. Okay? But we often have this idea behind a student like it's an obligation. Like it's something that, we just have to do. It's a season of our life we have to get through. So I hate that word, right? Because all of it goes with what we see as student. Like for me, so when I was in 9th grade, right, I was a naive little kid, okay? And I loved to draw. I wasn't good at it. I didn't have like creative outlook. Like I could look at something and I could try and copy it, but I loved to do it. So I signed up for a drawing class. It was art. The art teacher taught it, was drawing one, and I was really, really excited about it. And this teacher, she starts out the class, it's so great. She's like, everybody draws at different levels. It's not about how good you can draw. It's about the amount of effort that you put in. So I had my first little assignment that we had to do, and we had to draw something from our house. That was it. That was the description. So I picked this lamp that we had. It was this weird little lamp, and it had like ridges that like swirled all the way down. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to sketch it. And I'm erasing and I'm trying to get the shading right. And you know how some people, like when they're sketching, they're like have the rubbing and stuff. I didn't know what I was doing with that, but I was trying that even. It looked like I just took my hand and just like smeared it all the way up. So I was really I was proud of this thing. And I took it in and I turned it in. I got my grade back. C. And I went and asked her about it. She's like, you didn't look like you tried. And I was like, well, I'm not trying anymore. Like, I'm done. Like 3 weeks into this class, because of this teacher, I was already done. Like, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. If being an artist meant I had to be anything like this teacher, I didn't want any part of it. But get this, I was still an art student. Like, we use the word student to signify like this person's like in the process, like it's you're a student now, but someday you won't be, and you're just having to get through what it is. Like I took all sorts of general ed studies, and I had to take English classes and history classes, and I didn't really want anything to do with them, but I had to do it because to get to the next stage in life. But in the ancient biblical world, the word disciple means so much more. You were actively imitating both the life and the teaching of the master. So at the end, the apprentice, the person being apprenticed, that disciple was to be a living copy of the master. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And it's a journey. Like it's a journey that requires submission. I love this in Colossians 2, 6, and 7. It says, this is my favorite verse, like life verse, if you would. And now, just as you've accepted Christ Jesus as your Lord, you must continue to follow him. That's submission. Let your roots grow down into him and let your lives be built on him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. Like, this is how it starts. You've accepted Jesus Christ. Awesome. Now keep going. Like, follow him. Learn more about what he said, and then do it. Everything we talk about up here, it's all about trying to point you to living the way that Jesus said. Look, it's not enough to know it. Some of you out here, you know it. You can quote the Bible verses. You can talk about what he said. You can explain this, all these different sermons. You can explain all these different teachers. But we just don't do it. Like, you have to do it. And you're like, I know I'm supposed to put Jesus first. Then do it. And I do want to clarify, we're not talking about behavior modification. I think in the Old Testament, they became very, very obsessed with behavior modification. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. You can do this today, but on tomorrow you can't, and like all of this stuff like that. But Jesus made it very clear when he came in his first Sermon on the Mount. He starts talking about the heart issue. He's talking about how it is on the inside. He's saying it's not enough to just not do it. He said, if you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, you've committed adultery. He's talking about an internal transformation. All right, so we got to be a disciple if we want to make disciples. What else? Number 2 is we don't make disciples for ourselves. We don't make disciples for ourselves. The more I sit in this and the more I think about this, it's like every time I think about it, I'm getting something new out of this. So we just had Kid Life Camp, right? We just had that whole thing. I love how they started it. The counselors came down a day before all the kids did, so they could really build up the counselors and they could pour into them and they can pray up the week. And there's a part on Sunday night where they were talking about just hearing from God, and we were worshiping and they played some worship and they wanted us to all spread out and pray. And I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting maybe something like life-changing. Like, I don't know. Like, there's people that got some, like, amazing words from God. I don't know. Maybe I expected it to be like Job, where, like, God shows up in a whirlwind. He was like, where were you? And, what I got was a little underwhelming. I did hear from God, and he basically just said this: it's not about you. It's not about you. And because that, it was actually exactly what I needed to hear, because I spent the week building up other people, not just the kids, but the other leaders, even the people who were speaking. Like, I made a point to go and be an encourager. And I think that was exactly what I needed to be doing to that one. But that was my word. It's not about you. Turn to somebody and say, it's not about you. So I looked around. All the parents turned toward their kids. Like, quickly, okay? I'm guessing this is a conversation that has happened. But it's not about you. Like, our job as disciples is to guide people into an apprenticeship under Jesus. Okay, we're not trying to build a TikTok following, right? We're not trying to show people how great we are, or how great New Life Church is, or how great this ministry is, it's all about how great the King is. Paul says this, 1 Corinthians chapter 1. He said, some of you are saying, I am a follower of Paul. Others are saying, I follow Apollos, or I follow Peter, or I follow only Christ. Has Christ been divided into factions? Was I, Paul, crucified for you? Were any of you baptized in the name of Paul? Of course not. Look, and this is something that took me, like, as I was thinking about it, that even like correcting my thinking, look, Pastor James is a mentor of mine, but I am not a disciple of Pastor James. You are not a disciple of Pastor James. You are not a disciple of your mom, your friend, your small group leader. Look, we are not making disciples for ourselves. Our teacher, our master is Jesus. Like, look, we're not trying to build our kingdom. We build the kingdom. And God will use you to do that. All right, number 3. We help people stay connected to Jesus. We help people stay connected to Jesus. Look, this is the work of a disciple maker right here. Like Jesus said, those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. Raise your hand if you're in here and you ever needed help. My hand's up, that's for sure. So I actually needed help at Kid Life Camp. Not the kind of help you're thinking, although I might have needed that help too. We had an incident, and it's not like a bad incident, but it was one of the nights, and the nurses were coming around and they're doing the meds and all this stuff like that, and the doorknob fell off the cabin. It just fell down. And my kids were running around and stuff like that. And I let the nurses go. And the nurses called for our security team there. And they were like, can you guys get somebody out here? They're terrified. And I'm thinking, I'm not terrified. I would like a doorknob. Like, she wasn't talking about me. I didn't get that till later. She was talking about the kids. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't think the security realized they weren't talking about me, because the security gets there, and it was the lead security guy, and he wasn't very tall. He was like this tall or so, but like he was buff, and he had this presence about him. It's like he was a Green Beret at one point, and he said, let's try something new, and became a Navy SEAL. Like, I don't know. Like, this dude was intense. And he came to me, and he pulled me aside, and he looked at me like straight in the eye. He's like, it's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna let anybody come in. I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. And like, I couldn't like tell him I wasn't terrified, because here's the thing, I felt better. Like I did. Really, I just needed a screwdriver, but I felt better. Look, everybody needs help sometimes. And when Jesus says make disciples, what he's saying is what you need to do is you need to come alongside, be somebody's spiritual, like health coach. He's saying like help train others in spiritual disciplines. Look, we're not the master, right? We're just training people how to stay connected to the master. Look, 1 Timothy 4:8, it says physical training is good, but training for godliness is much better, promising benefits in this life and in the life to come. And that's what spiritual disciplines are. Like, they're not the end goal. Like, when we go to the gym and we're working out, some of you guys, you want to get buff, you want to look good in this, you guys want to, whatever it is that you do, but that's like the end goal is to train your body. You want to be able to lift more, you want to be able to do more. But spiritual disciplines, it's not about how much you can lift. It's not about how much you can carry. It's not about what you can do in the, I guess, metaphorical spiritual gym or something like that. It's about how training in those helps you in life. It's about making your life easier. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help each other, equip each other with the tools to run this race, to make disciples and to be a disciple. These tools are things like prayer, time in the Word, tithing, our giving. It is being committed to a church. It is worship. It is serving. That's why we're talking about these things all the time up here. That's why we're always pushing these things. These tools, these spiritual disciplines are things that Christians have used for thousands of years to stay connected and to stay growing in Jesus. Like, one of the practices that I found I need more of is solitude and silence. If you got kids in here, say amen. Like, right? I need more solitude. I sound like Jesus often withdrew to places, lonely places, so he could spend time with God. And can I just say, coming out of camp, like, this is easy for me at camp. When I go on mission trips, when I'm going away for a camp or a trip or whatever, it's like something that I'm doing with the students, this is easy for me. Like, I'm not a morning person. I don't like mornings. I used to always joke that my favorite time of the day is sunrise, but I only want to see it if I saw 2, 3, and 4 in the morning first. Like, I'd rather stay up all night to see sunrise than get up early to see the sunrise. But on these camps, like, I can get up early, no problem. I'll get up an hour before everybody else, 30 minutes before my first meeting, so I can have some time with God. And the reason I think this is because it's easy to see the consequences of me not doing it. Like, your kids don't want me to manage them all day if I didn't have this time. Like this, I need it. But on a normal day, it's like, oh, do I really need, like, yeah, it's good for me, but you know what else is good for me? 30 minutes of sleep. But I think of it, it's because of that urgency. Like, if I was going for a trip and I have to get up, I have to leave the house at 7 for the trip, get on an airplane, whatever, and I'm not packed, I'm gonna get up early that day and pack. No questions about it. It's easy for me to see what happens if I don't. I'm gonna get on that plane with no luggage, no clothes, and it's gonna be a weird trip. Right? But when you can't always see how it's gonna impact you, it's easy for us to slack up on this. And the problem is that when you start to slack with this, when you start to give up this time where you're connecting with God, it becomes easier to the next day. and the next day. And the big lie is that this won't have any difference in your life. Like, it's gonna have all the difference. It's gonna affect how you handle every circumstance in your life. I'm thankful for guys in my life that will call me out if I start to slip on this. If it's been a week since I've been in my Bible study, I'm getting a text message like, where you been, dude? Like, we need people in our life like that. We need people to help us stay connected to Jesus, which brings me to my last point. We are required to rest in him. Look, the last words he says in this passage in verse 20 is this, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. I love this. He was saying, yes, go and do, but at the same time he's saying, look, I'm right here with you. And if I'm gonna be honest, when I was working on the message, like I really felt like I needed to put this as my last point, my final point. And I think for sure it was a God thing because I kept wanting to take it out. I was like, no, this doesn't fit. Like I'm sitting here and I'm talking and I'm like, go and do. And God was like, yes, but rest in me. And I'm like, okay, but we're going out. We're making disciples. We're going to go and we're going to do this. And God was like, yes, but rest in me. I was like, I don't like that, but rest in me. See, this is a challenge for me. I'm a go and do person. I came right back from Kid Life Camp and I started preparing for this message. I'm always dreaming big dreams, like big plans. Let's make this happen. Go. I have to remind myself to take a day off most weeks. So why am I talking about resting? Jesus didn't say go and make disciples. And if you think that means you're just gonna lay down and take a nap, you're reading a different text than I am. This is my final Kid Life Camp story, all right? Final Kid Life Camp story. The ride home. Such a great time. I did my duty. And if you're secretly laughing because I said duty, have you thought about student ministry? Okay, but I did my job. My kids, I handed them off to their parents. They all had the same amount of fingers and the same amount of toes as they started with. Most of them went home with their shoes, most. All right, every single one of them had a moment where I felt like they grew closer to God and I was exhausted. And everyone was all talking. They were asking me like, where do you want to stop for dinner? And I'm like, don't care. I'm done with decisions. Like I'm done. I just want to drive. And they're like, okay, do you want to be like the lead car? Nope, not leading. Nope, I just want to follow. I'm driving. And they're like, okay, well, we go here and this place was full. Where should we go now? Driver, just the driver. But there's something so relaxing about being the second car in a caravan. I don't have to worry about where we're going. I just get to follow. I don't have to worry about, did I miss my exit? I'm following. Here's the thing, either way, I'm still driving. I still gotta watch out for dangers of the road, for other cars, but it's way more peaceful and it's way more relaxing this way. All I have to worry about is keeping pace with the person I'm following. And with that person in charge, like the person that's in charge, the person with authority, all I gotta do is make sure that I avoid any obstacles that would throw me off from the path of following them. Look, yes, we are called to go and do. We are called to go and make disciples, but we aren't doing this on our own. We aren't doing this on our own authority. And if going and making disciples seems overwhelming to you, maybe it's because you are trying to take the lead. Jesus said the authority is mine. Like it's not my weight to carry, it's his weight to carry. He's saying, I don't need you to figure it all out. I just need you to follow me. I just need you to focus on keeping my pace and avoiding any obstacles and dangers that would throw you off from the path I have laid before you. He said it like this in Matthew 11. He said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. So where's your holdup? Like, what's stopping you? Are you a disciple? Like, do you want God's will over your life? Do you pray like Jesus prayed in the garden? He said, look, God, I really don't want to do this, but it's not about what I want. It's about what you want. I want your will. And if you're not there, start there. Are you trying to do this alone? Find someone who can help lead you in this. Not in being a disciple of them, but lead you in being a disciple of Jesus. Find people in your life who hold you accountable. And like I said at the beginning, look, this is hard. I get it, it's hard, but sometimes it's because we're going about it the wrong way. We're not following Jesus and we're not following his pace. I want to do this for a church. I want to pray for you guys. If you would, just everybody close your eyes, heads bowed, nobody looking around. You know, you can't be a disciple of Jesus if you don't know Jesus. If you never, use our kid life terms, if you've never made Jesus the boss of your life, none of this is going to make sense to you. You can't follow someone you don't know. You can't follow the car in front of you if there's no car in front of you. So you're in here and you'd say, you know what, I've never done that before, but I want to. I feel like God is putting it on my heart to make this choice. Would you raise your hand? Again, all eyes are closed. I'm not going to call you up. I'm not going to pull you up to this stage. But I would like to know who I'm praying for. Or maybe you're in here and you're like, you know, I've lost my way. I'm not a disciple. But this is something I need more of you, God. I need some strength. I need some courage. Or I want to make the decision to dedicate the rest of my life to putting you, God, before me. If you're in here and that's you as well, would you also raise your hand? I see several hands here. If that's you, just pray something like this. Just pray, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for putting my desires over your desires. I'm sorry for putting my will over your will, Father. Father, I need more of you in my life. Father, will you take control of my life? Would you give me the direction? Would you give me the rest that you talk about as I follow your pace? Guide my steps, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.